All right, and now it's speaker time. Tonight, Daniel's going to be telling his story, and it was suggested by Troy, actually, that you should get Daniel to tell his story. It's really good. Hell yeah. And Joe S. also agreed. He's like, yeah, he's got a great story. So that would be my husband. And it's true, every time I hear Daniel share in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, he shares about the solution, and he shares his honesty and where he's at right now, and I really, I respect that, and I can always hear God speaking through him. So without any further ado, Daniel.
Thanks, Terry. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Daniel.
I just told
Many are.
So I was born here in Houston to a Cajun father and a mother that was probably an untreated Al-Anon my whole life, and still is. But I didn't know that. I was born here, and I thought I had kind of a normal life in the beginning. I did have the middle child syndrome, where I never felt like I fit in. I wasn't the first child. I wasn't the baby. I just never felt like I had a place. And I started at a young age, and I never really knew what it was. And life was pretty normal. I think we stayed here until we were in kindergarten, and then my father got transferred to Baton Rouge, back in Louisiana where we're from, and my family kind of just broke apart after that. But I can still remember, I didn't realize I had alcoholism before I ever took a drink until I started doing the steps, and I started examining my life, and I can remember times where if I didn't get what I want, I remember one time I wanted to play baseball with my dad, and he wouldn't do it, so I threw a baseball through the window, and I was only like in kindergarten. So I started throwing fits early, and that didn't stop until, and shit, I still do them today sometimes. But, we moved to Baton Rouge, and my dad stayed at a bar every night. He didn't never come home until 10 or 11 o'clock, and when he did, he was wasted, and that was my first real experience of understanding not understanding it, but seeing alcoholism. My family is Cajun, so they drink from when they wake up to when they go to bed. It's just the culture that they grew up in, and it wasn't no different for my dad. My dad gave me permission to drink as young as I can remember, as long as I was around him. If I was at a crawfish boil with him, or if I was at a family event, I could drink. And I didn't really like it at first because I knew my mom didn't like it. And it always caused problems in the family. And eventually, I guess I was in third grade, I came home, and the U-Haul was packed, and my parents were getting divorced, and we moved all the way across Louisiana to where my grandpa was living. And it happened after a weekend to where I had been playing baseball, and I won like MVP of the tournament. My dad was at the bar instead of seeing me get the trophy. And my mom had enough. They never really fought in front of us. They fought in the bedroom, but you could know they were fighting. And my dad also would be drunk and try to teach us martial arts because he knew martial arts, and kick us across the room. And he didn't mean to hurt us. He was trying to show us stuff, but when you're drunk, you don't really have a good equilibrium and don't know where you're at. And so he would kick us across the room or throw us across the room, and my mom just got tired of it. And that was the point in my life where I said, I hate alcohol, because my mom always said he was an alcoholic, and I didn't understand what it was, but that's when I hated him. I learned to hate him. I thought if he loved us, he could quit drinking, and hated him for a long time for that. He kind of disappeared. He went and worked overseas, and I never really saw him. He never showed up to any of my high school events or anything. Or, the alcohol was more important than the family. And I thought, how could anybody do that? How could anybody put alcohol in front of their kids? And later, I did the same thing later in life. But I moved to Louisiana, or moved across to my grandpa's house, and I had a normal life. I played every sport I could play. I kept my mind off the divorce. And then I learned that sports could fill the void that I had inside me. If I was really good at sports, people would like me. And that filled the void for a long time. I would practice sports from daylight till dark, whether I was in the basketball gym, on the football field, whatever it was. And I excelled. But I put all my time into it, and it did fill that void for a long time. And, I didn't understand why I never feel like I fit in, or I never felt okay with where I was at. And I just thought, I'm a divorced kid. You look for every reason to think why you don't fit in. And truth was, I fit in. I just didn't fit in my head. And, as this alcoholic, as I learned about the disease, I learned that I always think I'm different. And it's not a good thing for me. So, high school, I'm excelling at everything. I didn't really drink much in high school my first couple years. I lived in a dry county our dry parish where there was no alcohol. We had to drive to Leesville to get it, or we had to drink moonshine. In Louisiana, it's legal to make moonshine. You just can't make enough to sell. You can make enough to consume. And we had friends that had parents that would give us Coke bottles of moonshine. And that's what I drank for a long time, was we would drink a Coke bottle between 2 or 3 of us, and it would completely make you plastered. But I still was scared. I just didn't want to be my dad. I didn't want to start drinking like him. And then, I guess my sophomore or June, the end of my sophomore year, I had my first kid. Kids became another thing that would fill the void instead of alcohol and drugs. And I had 3 kids the next 3.5 years. By the time I was 21, I had 3 kids. And I thought I could be a better father than my dad. That was my goal, to show him how to be a father, when I really had no idea how to be a father. I married the girl in high school, and we were married for 13 years. But I feel sorry for her because I put her through hell. But my drinking kind of picked up after I graduated high school. I had 3 kids, but I didn't. I started smoking a lot of weed, and drugs will be in my story, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I started smoking a lot of weed, and that kind of would take my mind off of it. And then, before long, the inevitable happened, the drinking. And I moved to Houston right after I graduated high school. And I got a job as a bartender. That was, I guess you could say it, at that time, that was the greatest gift for an alcoholic, was to be a bartender. And I managed Hurricane Hut, Surf Shack, Bikini Beach right here on 1960 for 5 years. And I don't remember 5 years. I would drink 2 to 3 bottles of Jägermeister a night, and probably 10 or 15 shots of Patron. I don't even know how to make it home. Luckily, I lived across the street in Old Oaks, and I didn't have to go very far. And the bartending stuff was really where my disease picked up. And I didn't know I had a disease, I thought I was just partying like all my friends, but not all of them drank for 3 or 4 days. And, also the drugs picked up when I got into that scene. I was managing a club, and I started doing ecstasy, and ecstasy, I had done it earlier in my life, but I started doing it more when I was at the club, and then I decided to start selling it to get mine for free. And before you know it, I was selling 1,000 to 50,000 within a month. I was selling about 50,000 a month. And I become like, I don't even know. My ex-wife used to have nightmares. I had a gun safe full of cash and drugs, and ended up having to hire a bodyguard to live at my house. And I thought it was perfectly normal. After the kids, money became filling the void. And I had all this money in a safe, and I was okay because I had all this money in a safe, and I thought, I have the money, I'm going to be happy. I had a 5,000 square foot house with 3 cars, and I thought, I've made it. I made it. That's what I really thought back then. I was like, I have everything. I would buy $1,000 suits and never even wear them, but to fit them. And I just didn't understand life. And I guess I got out of that business a year before the federal government arrested me, because they had me on a sealed indictment. And February 3rd, 2004, they raided my house, and I was charged. They were trying to get me for conspiracy, RICO, manufactured delivery. They had all, like, I was looking at life in prison just from the drugs I had and the people I was involved with. I was involved with a pretty big organized crime group. And I don't know, my life, I had this idea, like, I'm not selling it anymore, so why are they arresting me now? Like, I just thought I was innocent now. Even though I had sold a lot and shipped it all over the United States, and I was, we had one of the largest organizations at the time running through clubs and stuff here in Houston. And I thought, why is God picking on me? Like, I'm doing everything I can. And so I'm going to court on this stuff, and this is how insane I was at the time. I went from managing that to I managed Barney's on Jones Road, the pool hall right there at Jones Road, and or on 1960 at Jones. And I was the manager there, and I was having to go to court. And this disease is so nasty that I'm looking at life in prison, possibly, and I'm drinking and drugging until 4 a.m, knowing I have to piss test before I go to court that could send me to prison for the rest of my life. And I was doing that every night. Today I understand the fear was making me do it, but I didn't understand it back then. At this time, I'm still hating my father because I blamed him for everything. He was my crutch on why my life didn't turn out the way it should have. And, I start going to, I get 12 years in prison, and I did 3 years on a 12-year sentence, and I come out, and I'm like, I'm not going to be around these people anymore. And I wasn't around those people, but I stayed sober for a month. And I got to see how it progressed. After a month, I went out for the first time. And when you bartend on the stretch like that, you know everybody in the business. Even though it's been 3 years, I start going out and everybody's giving me free drinks, and it just started the cycle again. It was like the river started running, and I'm on parole. I got 9 years parole, and I'm worried about passing piss tests. I'm worried about drinking every day because the monster started up again, and I just still didn't understand the insanity. The day I got out of prison, they gave me a paper, sent me to Spring Group. They didn't send me to Spring Group. They told me I needed to go to AA 3 times a week, and I had already knew you could sign your paper and they couldn't check because it's anonymous. But I did try one meeting. I went to the old Spring Group, and they had that little building, and it didn't have no windows, and they were smoking so bad you couldn't see across the room. And I was like, this judge wants me to die of lung. I still remember saying this. This judge wants me to die of lung cancer before I die of alcoholism. And I said, I'm never going back there. And I didn't go back for 4 years. But, the disease just kept going. It just kept going and going. And I still didn't understand it, I started going to Al-Anon at that time because I didn't want to hate my father anymore. And I would go to Al-Anon, and then I'd go drink after Al-Anon and talk about how I hated my dad because he's drinking, but then I would go drink just like him. And, this disease is crazy. I can still remember, like, the hole that I always felt, no matter what I had, no matter how much money I had, no matter what was going on in my life, I still just felt like a hole was inside of me. And and when I got done with when I got out of prison, it gives you this, when you do prison time and you get out, you feel like you're less than everybody else, really bad. And I mean, every job application I put out every time I tried to fill out an application, they'd see you had a felony and they wouldn't hire you. And it was tough getting my first job. And it was very, all I would do is drink about it, Nobody wants to hire me. I have this felony. It's like this cloud that follows you around. And, a company finally gave me a job, but that was after I got sober. I mean, I had jobs, but not like a good job. But the disease just kept destroying me, and I started going Al-Anon, and I didn't hate my dad anymore, but I started understanding that nobody drinks a bottle of Jack Daniels a day because they want to. So I was able to not hate my father as much because of his alcoholism. And, I met Melinda at in that time when I was really drinking and drugging after getting out of prison. And we met at Baker Street, a bar. And, we were both, she could drink with me. There wasn't very many women that could drink as much as I could drink. And we were like perfect alcoholic pair. Because she could drink me. Sometimes she could outdrink me, and that was amazing. But I would use a little drugs to keep up sometimes. So I cheated sometimes. But we're in a relationship that it's unhealthy. I mean, we're both alcoholics. Not too long after we get together, her father, Alfred, gets sober. And watching him go through that experience was kind of eye-opening. Watching him have to be in a wheelchair, he couldn't walk. Watching him go through withdrawals and stuff, that stuff was very eye-opening. I've been around a lot of alcoholics, but usually they just start drinking when they go through withdrawals. The ones that I was around, they didn't actually try to stay sober. And, it exposed me to AA because we came to his first birthday here. And I think in 2012, there was an AA conference at that hospital, or at that motel, the hotel by the hospital at Gessner and I-10. And Danny Brown was telling this story there. And I guess it's 2012 probably when it was. And, I hear him drinking, talking about how he was drinking, and I could relate to all his drinking. And then he talked about wearing an eye patch when he got there. Like he was so bad, he was wearing an eye patch and he didn't need to wear it. And I was like, man, I don't want to get that fucking bad. I just like, that just sounds like something that would happen to me, thinking I was cool to wear an eye patch. And, not long after that, we came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was 4/23/14 is my sobriety date, and that's probably the best day in my life. I finally got an answer to the disease that I had, a true answer. I always thought an alcoholic was a guy that drank every day, and if you didn't drink every day, you wouldn't be an alcoholic. And so I didn't drink every day. I drank usually like Wednesday through Sunday, but I drank alcoholically. And, I went to that first meeting, and I can still remember some of the first meeting. And Mary, she's a little lady about this tall, and she said, "You never have to drink again if you don't want to." And I thought, yeah, that just it sounds easy, but it's not that easy. And then, Mike Miller told me that just don't drink and come back tomorrow. And that sounded like something I could do. I wanted to drink, but I just didn't want the consequences anymore. And that just wasn't happening. The consequences just kept getting worse. And for me, I needed a solution. And when I got here, Cypress Group saved my life. This group was my first experience to AA, real experience with an open mind. Watching my father-in-law get his chips for a couple of years before I came in, and I was ready. I just, I was just scared of what my life would be like without alcohol and drugs, and I didn't know if I wanted to take that step. I didn't know what my life would be like, and You know, after doing the steps, you feel like fear runs everything. And so in April 2014, I came into the program, and we had already planned a wedding in the Bahamas. We had already paid for it before we ever decided to get sober. So I had this all-inclusive resort paid for, free drinks, and I'm 2.5 weeks sober when we fly to the Bahamas. And, you know, I didn't know if I was going to make it through that. That was a tough, for being fresh in sobriety, that was a tough experience. We went to some meetings in the Bahamas, and they were really nice. But they were like $65 a day a taxi, and I was like, we can't do this every day. So our father-in-law was there, and we had meetings in the resort, and that helped us. And I got back, and you know, in the beginning, I wanted what y'all had, but I just didn't want to do what I had to do to get it. Y'all's life looked amazing, and y'all were smiling. You know, y'all were having fun. Y'all could really laugh instead of just fake laugh. Y'all were really laughing. And I wanted that, but I was scared, and I didn't know I was scared. And it took me getting in enough pain to work the steps to realize how scared I was. And, you know, I came in, my first sponsor I had, and I'm glad I had him. You know, he's relapsed since then, but it doesn't matter. He kept me sober in the beginning. He wouldn't accept the shortcuts I was trying to take in the steps. You know, we did step 1 together and step 2. And he always set me up with a few words. You know, when I would call complaining, he would always ask me what my part was. And I would be like, you just don't understand. This person is doing this. And he's like, well, what's your part? And I didn't realize he was setting it up for the 4th step. I thought he was just not wanting to hear it. You know, I thought he just didn't understand like what I was going through. Like, this is terrible. You should listen. But he didn't, you know. And I had to learn I had a part in everything, good or bad. And I learned that later in the steps. But I had to have a hard sponsor in the beginning because I was looking for ways to shortcut this program, and there's not a shortcut. And he also encouraged me to be involved in service and everything I could do, whether it was taking out the trash, whether it was reading the thing every meeting. Every meeting I had to, he told me to go up and ask for the little thing to read. And I thought it was stupid in the beginning, but today I understand why. You know, I had to have how it works embedded into my brain by reading it over and over and over and over again. And once I did that, you know, I was a part of the group. You know, I felt like I was being a part of AA instead of just sitting there. If it would have been left up to me, I'd be sitting there in the back and I wouldn't say anything to anybody. And I would get out of here as soon as I could. But they, you know, when I first got here, they taught me about the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting. And to get here early and to stay and talk afterwards. And in the beginning, that stuff really saved my life. And when I got to Cypress Group, we had a lot of good old timers. Y'all know Boston Jim and Duncan and Ron Kay and all these guys that had, I don't know, they were like giants to me. They had like 30. Some of them died with 50 years already. But I mean, the stuff they said and the way they handled themselves was very attractive. You know, I wanted to be able to live life like that. And then my first year, I was encouraged to go on the kayak trip, went on that. And, you know, those things helped me in my sobriety because I would still be trying to do this alone if it was up to me. And alone, it's going to get me killed. It's going to get me killed. I'll start believing what my brain says, and it's just not a good thing for me. I have to be in the middle with alcoholics where I talk to on a daily basis. So I start working the steps with him, and I can remember getting to step 4, and I take about 30 minutes to do my step 4, bring it back to him, and he's like, that isn't good enough. Sent me back. And then I thought, okay, I'll do another 20 or 30 minutes. And I had to go back 4 times before he would accept it. And I'm grateful today. Back then I thought he was just being an asshole, But today I understand I wasn't being thorough. And I wasn't being, I don't always read the steps correctly. When I first did step 4, I thought it was this immoral inventory it's not immoral, it's moral. And Duncan used to always say that. It's a moral inventory. It's not always bad things I did. I learned a lot of good qualities I had in my inventory. But I didn't understand that. I always wanted to look for the negative in situations before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And once I got here and I started learning a different way of life, my perspective changed on things, and for me, that's what I needed. So I get through my 4th step, and it wasn't anything like I expected. I had some things in there I didn't want to. I used to collect money for the people that I worked for, and I had to do some pretty bad things to get money sometimes, and I just didn't want to be. I didn't want to be known as the person I used to be. I wanted to come in AA and didn't want to have to tell them about that life I used to live. I wanted that to be back in the past, and it is in the past, but I still have to get that stuff out. I never understood how much keeping things in keeps the power in it. When I get it out, at least the power's gone with whatever I'm trying to keep inside, and I didn't understand that until Alcoholics Anonymous. It took me doing the steps and having a good sponsor to push me to do the steps. After I did the 4th and 5th step, I really felt like I belonged in Alcoholics Anonymous. Before I thought it was their program, then it felt like my program. It felt like I was actually doing things because I had to write things down and I had to talk to them about it. And it felt like my program, like I was involved. And it felt like a giant weight was lifted off my shoulders after step 5. And for me, my program kind of took off after that. 6 and 7, I don't think I understood Section 7 when I first took 6 and 7 like I do today. Ron K. used to always say he lives in 6 and 7. And I was like, how do you live in 6 and 7? Everybody else says they live in 10, 11, and 12. And I understand it's my character defects, whatever fear I'm in today is what character defects is going to be popping out. And I understand what he was talking about. I didn't understand it that much back then. It took me a lot of trials and tribulations being sober. Y'all told me when I got here that the drink wasn't the problem, it was the way I thought. And I was like, nah, that's really not true. It's the drink. Every time I get in drink, I get into trouble. I don't normally get into trouble when I don't drink. But it was the way I thought. And, I don't know why God picked me to be in this program and why I was able to hear it. I struggle with that all the time, watching people come in and out. And I'm grateful that I got the opportunity that God took the cotton out of my ears to hear the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I did 6 and 7, and then 8 and 9, they wasn't that bad. But, I got into every service work I could do. I mean, I was every committee you were on at Cypress Group. I was the treasurer. I did everything. Anything that I could volunteer for, I was doing. And because that's what they told me would help me stay sober. And I was willing to do all that. I was about, 7 or 8 months sober. And I was teetering with the steps. And I got to another point where it was like, you're either going to do these steps or you're going to drink. And I got in enough pain to drink. And what had really happened, there was a girl that was sober when I got sober, and Laura, and she had like 3 years when I got sober, but she went out in my first few months, and she just could never get sober again, and she ended up taking her life. She jumped off the parking garage at that hospital at 290, and that's why they have a fence up there now, because right after she did that, killed herself. But I went to that funeral and watched her 3 high school kids talk about their mom and how her struggles were. And I made it really real. It made this program really, really real. Because I have kids, and I drank just like her. I was no different. You know, I could no longer tell myself I'm different than that alcoholic that happened to. I used to see people kill people on the news and go, that ain't me. I don't do that. You know, because of drunk driving. And I could never put myself in those alcoholic shoes. But shit, I drove drunk for 5 years every night. I have no idea how I got home most nights. There was some nights I didn't even count the money. I just threw it in the safe and would go back the next day at the club to count it all up because I was too drunk. So, you know, when she died and going to that funeral, and then we lost like 3 other people within like 2 or 3 months in the disease. And it scared me. It scared me into doing the steps, to be honest with you. It scared me to stop playing around with this, commit to the steps, and that I could have the same life that these people had that I wanted, you know. And I committed to the steps, and I got through them. 8 and 9 really wasn't that bad for me. I wasn't really scared about making too many amends. Most of my amends went pretty well. They were just like, we don't want to see you living like you used to live. You know, I paid back who I needed to pay back. I owed my stepdad some money, and I paid those people back. And, you know, life in AA was good. I mean, it was good. I was going to things, doing things, working the steps, sponsoring people. And I don't think I missed a meeting for 6 years. I think I went to a meeting every day for 6 years. Around 6 or 7 years, I went to a meeting every day. And life was good. I had a great, you know, ended up getting hired by an electrical company, and I was a project manager for them. I built 3 hospitals and all the buildings that I attended in Bunker Hill for them. And, you know, this program allowed me to become a person they could trust with multi-million-dollar job projects. You know, that was a $3 billion to build Texas Children in the Woodlands. I mean, that was a lot of projects. I had 350 guys underneath me. And if I didn't have Alcoholics Anonymous, there's no way I would have been able to do this. There was no way I would have been able to succeed. An alcoholic dealing with a bunch of alcoholic electricians, there was no way I would have been able to succeed. It was a circus. But I had a program, you know, and life was good. You know, you start helping people and sponsoring people, still doing as much service work as I could. And I guess about 8.5 years sober, I decided to change jobs. And I took a job where I was working out of town, where I was traveling. Never had a traveling job before. And I really started I didn't notice it in the beginning. You know, I started missing meetings. I was in towns for like 7 to 10 days while we remodeled a Whataburger or whatever we were doing, and then we'd go to another town. And I just quit going to meetings. You know, it started slowly, and then I would use the excuse of, oh, I'm not in a town long enough to feel connected, so I don't even go. And, you know, it doesn't take long for the bad behavior and the decisions to come back, and the making crazy decisions. And the insanity returned. I just completely I don't know. I didn't see it. Now I see it after, you know, I got back into the program, but I completely just altered my program. And that's why I was scared not to skip meetings, you know, not to quit going to meetings early in sobriety. But after you've been sober 7 or 8 years, you start making these excuses, and you're like, oh, I'll go tomorrow. And before long, you've missed 3 or 4 days when you're used to going to a meeting every day. And it just creeps up on you. And, you know, I start not doing what I'm supposed to do in life. I'm not taking care of my spiritual condition, so, you know, the disease is going to act up. And it got pretty dark that year and a half I was traveling, working. I guess I don't know. When was it? I don't remember exactly when it was. It was probably like June last year. It got dark, you know. I got to a point where I didn't want to drink during that time. But I did go to sleep a couple nights with a gun in my mouth. And I've never thought about suicide in my life. But last year it came into my life, you know. I wasn't treating my disease. I knew if you didn't treat this disease that you got to feed it with something. And a lot of people commit suicide in this program that quit doing the program. And, you know, that was a scary wake-up call for me. You know, I wasn't going to meetings, wasn't talking to my sponsor, wasn't working the steps, wasn't sponsoring people. I was just being sick. I was just being sick with the disease. And I knew I didn't want to drink because I don't know if I would ever come back to AA. I just think my pride wouldn't let me. Or I would really fuck my life up before I came back. And, you know, I've built a pretty good life. I really have a great life because of Alcoholics Anonymous and what the people in there taught me how to do. But, you know, suicide became an option. I guess it's about a year and a half ago. I don't remember exactly what day it was. But, I had to reevaluate what I was doing with my life. I started going to a meeting every day again. Started working with a sponsor. Started sponsoring people again. And life slowly started to be AA again. I can't fit AA into my life. I have to build my life around AA. And what I was trying to do was fit AA into my life. And it's just not the way it works. You know, I got this amazing life by doing AA like it's taught. And I decided to try to change it and tweak it. And the insanity returned. And, you know, I don't need drugs and alcohol to hurt people around me. You know, I can do that very well sober. And it's because I'm not treating the spiritual condition. I start thinking, I can still remember having the thought that I got 8.5 years, I can do this. And I quit going to meetings, you know. I just thought, oh, I can handle my life now. All of a sudden, I can take it back. After 8.5 years of y'all helping me with my life, I thought I could take it back. And luckily, I didn't drink, you know. And the program is amazing, you know. Watching the miracles happen is the greatest gift for me in this program. I love seeing people come in here beat down. They start doing the steps. I mean, I don't like seeing them beat down. That might have sounded bad, but I mean, I like to see the transformation of AA in their life, I guess would be the correct way to say it. I don't want to see people beat down, but the truth is this disease beats you down. And until you get that desperate state, you're not gonna submit. And I enjoy watching the lights come on in people's eyes because of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to say that's my greatest joy of this program. You know, watching that change. And the people that have helped me, you know, I'll forever be in debt to those old timers. Boston Jim, Ron K, Duncan, Skip, all those people that were there that were patient and that listened to me complain and cry and you know, and they just were like, it's going to be okay. And I was like, but you just don't understand. It's not going to be okay. This is happening. I can remember, what was it, my first year in sobriety? I was going down Louette, and it doesn't have any street lights. And I guess a girl had gotten into a fight with her girlfriend, and she jumped out of the car, and she had all black on. And she was walking down the side of the road. There's no sidewalk. And I was behind somebody, and we both swerved because she was walking, and my mirror hit her, and she fell down in the ditch. Old me wouldn't have stopped. Only because of this program, I stopped. Old me, I would have been out of there. There's no way I would have been stayed for that shit. I was on parole. I'm thinking I'm going back to prison. You know, but I could hear the old timers in here do the right thing. And I stopped. And it wasn't even my fault. I didn't even get a ticket. But my mind was telling me, you're going back to prison. You know, you fucked up. And I didn't fuck up. And I got there, and I got that Cypress group in Boston Gym, and I was like distraught. And he's like, did you do what you were supposed to do? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, that's all you can do. You know, you can't you can't. Things are going to happen. You just have to do the right thing. And luckily, because of the people in here that's taught me how to do the right thing, I learned how to do the right thing. You know, when I got here, those old timers would not let me stay in the problem. They would listen to about 5 seconds of it, and then they were like, okay, well, what are you going to do now? You know, if you don't get in the solution, the problem stays there. And it tells me in the back in 417, that was the other thing my first sponsor always told me to read, 417 to 420. And I hated him for that too. But I love him today for that, you know. I didn't know how to get out of the problem. You know, I didn't know how to stop being the victim when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, if you had a dad that was never around, you would drink and drug too. You know, if you had the life I had, even though I made all my decisions, I blamed them all on him. And I learned all the decisions were my choice. He did not make a single decision for me. And, you know, life is good. You know, I'm grateful. I have no idea how this has worked, but my kids don't drink. They don't drink and drug. And I don't understand it, but I'm grateful that this program taught them a different life. You know, that my youngest is 22. And she does, none of them drink. They don't even like alcohol. And I don't know, it's only by the grace of God and seeing what happened to my life that hopefully they can have a different life. And this program's able to break the cycle. My stepkids don't really mess with any of that either. You know, I have a stepdaughter she just made district goalie of the year for her college in Kansas. And it's amazing the life you have. And you can actually work through problems and deal with life on life's terms. I could, you know, I learned everything how to go. I can still remember when I got here, I was like, there were certain things in life that I just won't be sober for. And that's like burying my parents. I buried my dad about 2.5 years ago. And I've stayed sober through it. That was because I watched people do the same thing. You know, he died that slow alcoholic death. He had enough... he had strokes to where he went blind. And then his body started shutting down. And, you know, I showed up when he was on, hospice. And he's under a Jack Daniels blanket. And the priest is giving him his last rites. And I thought it was kind of fitting. You know, the alcohol killed him and he's there dying. Still blaming it on the doctors that wasn't the bottle of Jack Daniels he was drinking that killed him. And, you know, I got to see what alcohol will do to me slowly if I keep that lifestyle up. And I'm so grateful for the life Alcoholics Anonymous gave to me. It taught me how to live life on life's terms. Hell, I'm still learning, you know. I have a great life today. I have things I never thought I would be. I've accomplished things that I didn't think I would be able to accomplish. I used to dream about life, and today I get to live the life I dreamed. And it's all because of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's all because of what I heard from people in here that taught me how to stay sober, and the way people reached out and helped. All you have to do is ask. I can still remember my first kayak trip, Brandon asking for a sponsor at that one night meeting. And he's been sober ever since. It was amazing. Just watching the things happen is cool. And being a part of people's life and watching them recover. It's cool. You know, you get to share and watch their life get put back together. And I don't know if I could ever repay everything this book has done for me. You know, I was taught to this is what the program is the first 164 pages. If I start interjecting anything that's not in this first 164 pages, it's my opinion. And my opinion don't get you sober. If it's not in the book, it's not the right way to do it. And I learned that from some old timers that beat it in my head. And, you know, this group will always be special to me. I've been coming back here more than I go to Cypress anymore, but this is probably going to be pretty much my home group from now on. I don't really go to Cypress, but because this was my first experience to AA that I really wanted to be a part of. And I'm glad y'all asked me to speak, and I think that's it.